So how did Steve Jobs fit into this whole equation?
Well, we originally met Steve when he visited us at Pixar, and at that time we were starting this process of thinking about spinning out, and then Steve disappeared. And then we reappeared several months later after we'd started to talk with a lot of other companies, and he, of course, had been kicked out of Apple. So when he first met with us, he wanted to buy us out to turn us into the computer company he wanted to make. And what we said was, well, actually, our dream is to make an animated film. So we declined. And then Steve went off and formed Next Computer. And then after he formed Next, we ran into each other because the Computer Graphics Conference that year was fortunately in San Francisco. And so Steve came by our booth, and our negotiations were all going to hell with these other places. And we were in danger of being just stopped and shut down and all let go. So we started up the talks with Steve, and he was now interested in acquiring Pixar, but on the terms of what we wanted to do. And so we went through this, actually one of the hardest negotiations I've ever been through in my life. But we were acquired for $5 million from Lucasfilm. And then
And you're worth more than that now, right? Is that fair to say?
$6 or $7 million
just for the
today's
people who might not know.
But that was $1986, so you know.
So it's about the same.
Yeah. So, but at that time, it wasn't even at all practical to make an animated film. So we have this long-term vision, but we're smart enough to know that we're nowhere near it. So we start to sell hardware.
You have to understand, everybody, at this point in time, in order to do computer animation, there was no off-the-shelf software, and computers were very big, very expensive, and you needed machine rooms to run them. You know, the personal computer was just a very kind of small, you know, a small, not very powerful thing. And so in order to do computer animation, you had to write your own software, build everything from scratch. Also, in our case, in all the things that the Lucasfilm Computer Division was developing, we had to invent our own hardware. And that's where, so a big portion of the Lucasfilm Computer Division and then Pixar in the early days was hardware and software designers. And the Pixar Image Computer was so far ahead of its time. It was starting to be used in medical imaging. In fact, Pixar first did the first 3D reconstruction of CAT and MR scans, which is very commonplace now, but it was invented at Pixar. We did a lot of seismic thing. We even, some of the people got CIA clearances because we realized that there was, out there in the world, there was a lot of high resolution kind of data gathering devices from cameras, satellites, seismic, MR scans and all like that, but there was no such thing as high definition yet, or any kind of computer to use it, and that's what this computer was. And it was so far ahead of its time that there was absolutely no customers for it at all, except a few.
Wait, we got the medical customers, and the other one was, it turns out that when there was that hostile takeover of Disney by Roy Disney Jr. and the Bass Brothers, one of the things that Roy Disney Jr. wanted to do was to bring energy back into animation, which at that point was in pretty bad shape. So it was Roy who led them to enter into a contract for us to write the software to color the cells using our Pixar Image Computer. And that was the start of our formal business relationship with Disney, driven by Roy Disney.
And so we started with yeah, Roy was a visionary.